Most UK directors think liquidation is something that happens to them, like it's out of their hands, like someone pulls the trigger and they just deal with the consequences. That's all wrong. And it's that misunderstanding is exactly what causes directors to make costly mistakes. Mistakes that can follow them personally for years. Now, liquidation is a process. It has steps. And if you follow those steps correctly, you can protect yourself, you can protect your reputation and your future. Now, if you don't, you could end up personally liable for debts you didn't have to be liable for. Now, in this video, I am going to walk you through all 6 steps, and every single step is going to be in plain English, okay? I am Chris, I'm the founder of Director First. We work with company directors across the UK who are facing exactly the kind of situation you might be in right now. And by the end of this video, I promise you, you're going to know every stage of the liquidation process. What happens, when it happens, and what you need to do at each step to make sure that you're protected. Now, I'm going to cover something near the end of this video that most directors never find out about until it's too late. A window of protection that closes very fast, and that could be the difference between a clean exit and a personal claim against you, the director. So stay with me because that part matters. Right, here is what we're covering today. We're going to cover step 1, which is recognizing the trigger point, okay? Step 2, understanding your duties as a director the moment you're insolvent, okay? Step 3, getting the right advice. And step 4, choosing the type of insolvency process that you're going to need, okay? Step 5, appointing a licensed insolvency practitioner on what they actually do. And step 6, the liquidation itself and life on the other side of it. So we're going to talk about 6 steps. Listen, let's go. Step 1. I get this all the time. Recognizing the trigger, okay? And this is something that directors get wrong a lot of the time, okay? They think insolvency is when a company runs out of money. And it's not. You know, it's not when there's nothing in the bank account. Legally, your company is insolvent the moment it meets one of these 2 tests, okay? The first is a cash flow test. And it's when your company can't pay its debts as and when they fall due. That's it. Not might struggle to, not it's a bit tight, can't pay. So if you can't pay an HMRC VAT bill, that is a sign you're insolvent, right? If you are in a time to pay arrangement, that is a sign that your business is insolvent. Now, the second test is the balance sheet test. And all that means is add up all your liabilities, what the company owes, and are they greater than the company assets, what the company owns. Even if you're still trading, even if there's money still coming in, if your liabilities are more than your assets, you fail the balance sheet test. Now, this matters because the moment your company meets any of those types of tests, the rules change, okay? Your obligation as a director changes. And the problem is most directors keep going on for weeks or months without realizing things have changed. And it's that delay. It's that gap between when insolvency starts and when you act. That is where the personal risk builds up, okay? So that's the trigger, right? I want you to ask yourself this question. Can your business get back on a firm financial footing in a reasonable period of time, okay? And if the answer is no, and you fail both of those insolvency tests, that's the trigger, okay? Now, step 2, your duties as a director, they change the moment your company becomes insolvent. This is serious, okay? Under the Insolvency Act 1986, when your company is solvent, your duty is to shareholders, to grow the business, to generate value. The moment your company becomes insolvent, that duty shifts. And it shifts to the company creditors, the people that your company owes money to. Now, you're probably asking, well, what's that mean in practice? It means you shouldn't really be taking company money out for yourself. It means you shouldn't be paying one creditor preferentially over another. It means you should be really careful about taking on new credit. Especially, in fact, if the company's got no realistic chance of repaying that credit, you shouldn't take any more on. You shouldn't be taking deposits if you don't think that you're going to be able to fulfill the jobs. If you do any of those things after the point of insolvency, an insolvency practitioner are going to investigate and they can bring a claim against you personally, okay? That is not a scare tactic. That's their job. That's the law. So that the single most important thing step 2 is about is making the decision, should I continue to trade? And actually taking some advice immediately. Which brings us to step 3. Now, you know when the clock starts ticking, the next step is making sure you talk to the right person, okay? Because who you speak to and when changes a lot, okay? And sort of steps 3 and 4 is taking advice and choosing the right firm. So listen, let's get to step 3 first. Get independent advice, okay? I want to be very direct with you about something here, okay? Not all advice is equal. And when you're under pressure, scared, stressed, not sleeping, you are vulnerable to taking advice from the wrong people, right? Listen up to this. Here is who you need to speak to. If you are doing an insolvency process, you need to speak to a licensed insolvency practitioner. That is someone who legally authorised to handle formal insolvency process. They are regulated, they are qualified, they carry professional liability, okay? Now, I am not a licensed insolvency practitioner. I work with a lot of them. My job at Director First is to help you understand your options as a director. An insolvency practitioner is a little bit different. They are duty bound to advise the company, the limited company, not the director. In actual fact, the insolvency practitioner is duty bound to represent the creditors in an insolvency, which is quite a strange dynamic if you think about it, because if you want an accountant, you want an accountant to act on your best interests, solicitor to act on your best interests. Actually, an insolvency practitioner is there to represent the other side. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just what they do. That's why I believe it's really important for someone like yourself to have someone like me in your corner also advising you, right? You don't necessarily need to speak to your accountant first, okay? You don't really need to speak to your bank. You don't really need to just pay somebody a referral fee to someone who passes you along. You want to go direct to somebody who has experience, okay? Now, either you go direct to a licensed insolvency practitioner or speak to a firm like Director First, okay? We will give you honest, independent guidance on your options before any process begins. Now, the reason why this step matters is a good advisor is going to tell you, well, first of all, is liquidation the right answer? Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes there are other options. Might be administration, might be a formal restructuring your debt. It might be just a case of picking up the phone to HMRC, speaking to creditors. You know, maybe just a strategy to deal with creditors could save the business entirely. You might consider a CVA. But you won't know unless you ask. And you need to ask for advice before you make irreversible decisions, okay? Now, there are people out there who are offering to buy debt-ridden businesses, take on all your debts, and let you sail off into the sunset. The catch is you've got to pay them to buy the business. I saw one the other week. They owe about £500,000, this business, and this company has offered to buy their company for £1, but they have to pay them 30 grand to do it. Listen, guys, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Now, this is a part of the video where I want to plant something in your mind today, because in step 5, I'm going to show you what a licensed insolvency practitioner actually does once you appoint them. And there's one part of the role that most directors don't expect, and it's about you, okay? It's not about the company, it's about you. I want you to keep that in mind, right? So, step 4. You choose the insolvency process. And there are a number of insolvency processes that an insolvent company can use. I'm going to keep it dead simple. The most common one is something called a creditor's voluntary liquidation. And it's a route for directors who have decided that the company can't continue. You initiate it as a director. Okay, that's important, right? Because acting voluntarily demonstrates responsible behaviour. It shows to the creditors and the insolvency practitioner, you're not someone who just buries their head in the sand, okay? There's another type of liquidation, and it's not as common. It's called an MVL, Members Voluntary Liquidation, and this is only for solvent companies. So if the company's has assets and cash and you want to close it down tax efficiently, this is a good route for you. It's actually a very positive process. It's a shame because it's called liquidation, that puts people off. It requires a declaration of solvency from the directors, and it's only available if the company can pay off all its debts in full, and you'd probably need about, I'd say, 30 grand plus of distributable profits afterwards. Another process that isn't initiated by you as a director is a compulsory liquidation, and this is where a court orders the company to be wound up. And it's usually triggered by a creditor who's owed money and basically they've had enough of you. Now, the critical difference between voluntary and compulsory is that you're in a voluntary liquidation, you've got an element of control of the timing. You can go out there and find a company that you want to work with, right? In a compulsory liquidation, you're not in control of anything. And the investigation into the director tends to be more intense because it sort of shows that you're not responsible. It's the official receiver who does the investigation, and the consequences are always more severe, okay? Then you've got administration, okay? Administration, you can do it voluntary. And that's where, again, you need an insolvency practitioner. And administration's handy if there's something within the business that needs rescuing. It could be that the company can be rescued as a going concern, or there could be assets within the business that can be sold off to raise money for creditors. Generally, in an administration, you look to preserve the goodwill, you look to preserve the value. From the outside world, from a PR point of view, it's seen more of a rescue process, okay? Now, the next part, and this is where most directors get things completely wrong, and I want to make sure you're not one of those people, okay? Because this step 5 is where the formal process starts, and what you do in the weeks before you appoint an insolvency practitioner can either protect you or completely expose you, right? Now, I want to talk about a point in the liquidation. By the way, I should have done this earlier. If anything I've said has sort of made you think, I need to speak to these people, we offer free and independent advice. Go to the description. There is a link at the top of the comment section. Click on that link, put your details in. One of my team will call you today. Free, impartial, independent advice with the #1 on Trustpilot. We've got hundreds and hundreds of reviews. Once you've taken advice, guys, right, and you've chosen the right insolvency route, this is where the formal appointment of the insolvency practitioner actually happens. And this is what it looks like. The first step is the directors pass a resolution basically confirming the company's insolvent and can't continue to trade, okay? So this is the process of liquidation. Then a shareholders meeting is called or a written resolution are passed to formally approve the orderly wind-up of a company and you nominate an insolvency practitioner. Then there is a meeting of creditors, right? And some of these are still done physically, but most of them are done by virtual phoning. And this is where the creditors are informed that the company is no longer solvent and the directors want to put it for a voluntary liquidation. And you're almost writing to them to give them notice. And it's at this stage that sometimes creditors can actually nominate their own insolvency practitioner, depending on how much money they're owed. Every creditor that you've got has a vote on who the insolvency practitioner is. Now, once the insolvency practitioner is appointed, they take full control of the company. You as the director step back, your authority ends, and it's where the insolvency practitioners begins. Now here's what I told you to remember. The part about their role that most directors don't expect. One of the insolvency practitioner's legal duties, right, is to investigate your conduct. That they're required to report to the insolvency service on how you have conducted yourself as a director before and during insolvency. They're going to look at everything that's gone out of the bank. They'll have a look if because you can sell assets before you appoint an insolvency practitioner, but you've got to make sure that they've been sold at a fair market value, because the insolvency practitioner is going to look at what assets left the company and when. And they're going to also look at how you've taken money out of the company. Have you took it out as salary? Have you took it out as dividends after the company has become insolvent? And if you have took it out as dividends after the company's become insolvent, that's a problem. Now, I need to make this bit clear. This is not there to punish directors who have made honest mistakes, okay, in a tough market. Listen, businesses fail. It's not a crime. But the insolvency practitioner is there to catch directors who have took assets out of the company for a lot less than what they're worth, continue to make big drawings out of the business personally. Towards the end of the company's life, they've made huge payments to connected companies, or they've paid certain suppliers over others. They've took on debt with no intention of repaying it. Now, if your behaviour was responsible, you've got nothing to fear from this. If there are things in your recent trading history that concern you, that's exactly why you need proper advice quickly before you appoint anyone, okay? And this brings me to the window that I mentioned at the start. If you take advice early, before liquidation is formally triggered, a good advisor can help you identify what your problems are going to be. That's not to say they're going to hide your problems, because once a lot of this stuff's been done, it's irreversible. But what it does, what we do here, we help you understand your position first of all, up front with absolute clarity. Because once you've appointed an insolvency practitioner, they're duty bound just to do their job. If you act early enough and get good advice, you know what you're walking into. And for me, people might ring. I sort of advise you, speak to plenty of firms, you know, don't just trust some funny looking bold chap from Preston. But what people are blown away about our approach is they might have spoke to lots of different firms, and what we've said to them is gone, right, well, actually, let's really get into it. We don't want any money off you yet, right? Let's get into this. Have you thought about this? You do know that your overdrawn loan account's going to get called in. Wait there, you've took assets there for less than the worth. You shouldn't have done that. Like, we're going to give you a lot of value to help you understand what the ramifications of this insolvency are, okay? Now, you need to be aware of that nuance. So once the insolvency practitioner is appointed, the investigation is going to begin, okay? What actually happens to the company, the assets are new, well, that's sort of step 6. And let's talk about that. That's the liquidation process and what comes after. Because once the insolvency practitioner is in place, the process is going to run as follows. The liquidator will take control of company assets, so that's bank accounts. The bank will freeze them. Premises are vacated. Staff are made redundant. The company stops trading. If it hasn't already, that is. And that's if there's no sort of pre-pack in place, no new company rising out of the ashes. The insolvency practitioner then is going to try and realise the assets. So they're going to try and convert machinery, plant, vehicles, debtors, whips into cash. And they might try and sell stock, they might try and sell equipment or property. It might mean collecting money that's owed into the company. And then the idea is that cash is distributed to creditors in a structural order of priority, okay? And the order is this, right? First, secured creditors. The creditors that have got a charge over company assets. Second, you have preferential creditors. Well, spit my teeth out on that one. Which in most cases means employees who are owed wages or redundancy claims. Third, you've got HMRC for certain debts. And then fourth, you've got unsecured creditors. So that's like your suppliers, landlords. Now, in most liquidations, unsecured creditors, they receive little or nothing. And that's a reality. If there were assets to pay them in full, you probably wouldn't be in an insolvency process. Now, once all those realisable assets are distributed, the insolvency practitioner sort of can move on. And eventually the company is formally dissolved and it gets struck off the company's house register. It sort of ceases to exist. That process can sort of take a minimum of 12 months, longer in complex cases. Now, what about you? Because as a director, liquidation doesn't automatically mean you're going to be banned, you know. Doesn't automatically mean that you're personally liable for company debts. It doesn't automatically mean you can never be involved in a business again. Those things only happen if you're found guilty of things like wrongful, fraudulent trading. Your director's conduct report highlights such information to the insolvency service that they look for a disqualification order against you. We're seeing a lot of people be disqualified for bounce back loan abuse at the moment. You know, so if you took a bounce back loan and you weren't entitled to one, you spent money personally on the bounce back loan, you took too much. Now, the other issues that I talked about being made personally liable, you can get made personally liable when you gave a personal guarantee. And that could be for a loan, a credit card, supplier debt. It's a separate issue entirely. The vast majority of directors who go through liquidation, they do so fairly cleanly. They close the company, they learn from their experience, and they move forward. Now, I want to talk to you about that window again that you've got before you appoint an insolvency practitioner. That window I mentioned at the very start of the video. The one that can close pretty fast. Now, it's the window between you recognising insolvency and you formally appointing an insolvency practitioner. In that window, I think you need to get advice from your personal exposure. Understand what's going to hit you as a result of an insolvency, so you can prepare yourself before the formal investigation begins. Now, most directors don't know that window exists. They wait until a creditor forces their hand, or they get a winding up petition of HMRC, and by then the options are narrower, okay? The directors who go through this process in the best shape are the ones who pick up the phone early. Now, I want to talk to you about one of the biggest things that causes directors issues personally before they go for an insolvency, sorry, when they go for an insolvency process, and that's your overdrawn loan accounts. That's where you owe the company money, and the insolvency practitioner is duty bound to ask you to pay that back. Now, this is a bit that can blindside directors a lot because they don't think they owe the company money. They haven't taken an overdrawn loan account. An overdrawn loan account sits on your balance sheet, and to find out if you've got one, you could go to your last set of accounts, or you can have a look on your balance sheet. If you used QuickBooks, some type of accounting software, you could find it out there. But I want you to be prepared. If you've got an overdrawn loan account, you're going to be asked to pay it back. And this can put the fear of God into directors, because a lot of directors haven't got the money to pay the overdrawn loan account back into the company. So you do have options there. And it ranges, you know, some overdrawn loan accounts are written off because the insolvency practitioner can't justify taking action against the director because the director doesn't have any assets personally, I should say. And some overdrawn loan accounts are paid in full. You know, if you like £1 million house with no mortgage, you've got hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of money in the bank, the insolvency practitioner can make a full recovery. Therefore, your scope for a discount or a deal is vastly diminished. Again, overdrawn loan accounts are something we can help and advise you on. Now, the one thing I want you to take away from this video is liquidation is not the end of the world, but it is a process that punishes the unprepared, and it protects those who act early and act properly. Now, if you're watching this because you're in this situation right now, or you think you might be heading towards it, the best thing you could do today is have a conversation. It's not a commitment, it's not a decision. We don't want any fees off you. It's an conversation. So book a call with us at Director First. Remember, the link is in the description below. It takes 60 seconds to book and it's confidential. If you want to understand what happens when a creditor threatens to wind you up and what your rights are in that situation, I've actually covered that in the next video, okay? I want you to go over there and watch this video about winding up petitions. It will tell you everything, what you can do, what you can't do, why it's such an important thing. And I hope if you've found the video useful, I hope I'm going to see you in the next video. Go and watch that one about winding up petitions. Thank you.